the value of the token itself is therefore likely to be derived not from its store of value, which we talked about earlier, but from the amount of usage.
Absolutely. And first of all, liquidity. I think it's very important that the XRP ecosystem continue to build liquidity, that you get more participants, that you incentivize people to use it, because that's when these network effects really start becoming apparent. So just, market cap going up, the volumes, the transactions going up on exchanges, I think that's very important. I think the number of use cases that the ledger is being applied to going up, and that we're seeing that. But in the real world, not the crypto world, it's pretty successful, right? 10% of all remittances between the United States to Mexico were done with XRP. And that's a big deal.
So outside of MoneyGram, who else is using it? Because I hear a lot that a lot of banks are kicking the tires and thinking about it. Who's actually using it and who's kind of sniffing around the whole thing right now?
Yeah, you've got R3, you've got SBI, you've got the Central Bank of Thailand. You have consortiums of other permissioned blockchains, right? And you have RippleNet. So it's being used at scale by people not in crypto, and that's news in and of itself, right? That, yes, to me is right. Okay. If it's actually not just a speculative experimental function, but it's actually being used in the real world to solve real problems, that to me is the most important test. So yes, it doesn't have the same amount of liquidity as Ethereum or Bitcoin right now, right, in terms of market cap. But as I started the call with, it's already on track, right along where Bitcoin is. So even as a speculator, as an investor, you might say, well, what are the upsides versus the downsides of holding XRP as a digital asset? Well, we already know it's on track where Bitcoin was in year 7. So the fact that it's being used in the world today to solve real problems, it's already using or basically going from the hypothesis stage to the use case, to the real world use. So do I think it's going to persist? Yes, I feel strongly that it's going to persist. And despite the tribalism and the negativity, more and more people are using it, that just by evidence of the volumes. Take a look at the volumes on them.
It's kind of out of the kind of crypto speculative radar screen, and it's really what it is becoming a utility, and it'll derive its value from its utility function, i.e. the more people who are using it, the more it's likely to go up, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is not being used in any other way specifically, or not many other ways specifically, as opposed to store of value, which seems to be its use case.
Yes, I totally agree. And again, those things it's not mutually exclusive. You don't have to pick one versus the other and say that, that's going to be all things for all people.
They're different things. I mean, that's very clear.
Right. And as an investor, again, it's about recognizing what your true counterparty risk is, where those risks are, and then assessing whether or not the upsides are outsized return. And that's how I look at it. If some newer technology with better performance characteristics can solve those specific problems better, I would be the first to recommend it. But until that happens, and until even a new technology were to arrive today that does the exact same thing with better properties, until it reaches a certain level of liquidity, it needs all of these things together to really challenge it as kind of the incumbent for fast payments, supranational payments. So right now it's the king in that regard.
And is one of the features of this the fact that Ripple is going out marketing this to banks and central banks? So, there's nobody marketing Bitcoin, for example, there's nobody, but within this, you've got somebody who's going out speaking to the financial institutions saying, listen, we've got a solution. Because that helps, therefore, enterprise sales. You get more people onto the network in large chunks as opposed to relying on individuals.
That's right. And up to this point, they have relied on the retail sector primarily to drive that liquidity. But I think, first of all, you need some regulatory clarity. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum, very clear in the United States what their regulatory position is. We're seeing that with Fidelity, State Street, all these other large firms saying, hey, we're going to custody banks. The OCC has provided clarity on custodying digital assets. So there's a lot of clarity with respect to Bitcoin and Ethereum in the US markets. And I think one of the things holding XRP back is that level of clarity, right? Ethereum in the beginning was, issued by a very small group of people, and the SEC has clearly said it was a security. It no longer is a security because it's sufficiently decentralized. So XRP as a digital asset would need to have the same level of regulatory clarity, I think, in the US markets to reach that same level of adoption by US banks and institutions. But the world is a big place, and it's not just the United States. And there's already clarity in Thailand, Mexico, Japan, Brazil regarding XRP. And it's likely that they focus more of their efforts in those jurisdictions because that's where they'll see, as you said, more institutional adoption.